No! Sinners is brought to us by Ryan Coogler, writer and director of this film, starring Michael B. Jordan, Haley Steinfeld, amongst other people, including Delroy Lindo. It's a period piece / horror film set in the Mississippi Delta in the early 1930s, the Jim Crow time specifically, where twin brothers, both played by Michael B. Jordan, go down to the Mississippi Delta to open a juke joint where they can create their own type of music venue for their local community with the help of their cousin Sammy, who's wanting to break away from his own strict religious background, only to discover later that night that there's something sinister lurking in the forest nearby. That's a very surface level description of the plot, because there's a lot more to it that's going on there. I didn't get a chance to see Sinners on opening weekend, and also I hesitated to see it for various reasons because I'm not really into horror, and vampire stuff isn't really for me. Just the thought of them biting their victims and sucking their blood. I can tell you for a fact that even this movie did not help that.
No, stop! Why are you no!
But there was also a lot of rave reviews that were coming out for this. A lot of people calling this an instant classic, that it was the best of 2025, it'll go down in history, that kind of stuff. That was a really big turnoff for me because a lot of times I've had experiences like that, and I come out of it not really amazed. But thanks to the insistence of my one follower, I decided, alright, why not? I can tell you for a fact that I walked out of the theater in complete awe and amazement. This film is truly something to behold. I don't know if I'll be able to do the movie justice because every review that I've seen has already covered what I'm about to say. I am going to go into some spoilers, so if you don't want to know what happens, there's your warning. Now, we've seen vampire stuff before in other films. That's not new. We've seen gangster dealings in other movies before, so that's also not new. A film set in the Jim Crow era, again, we've seen that before, but it all feels very unique, and it also doesn't feel out of place. The first half is really just them doing the legwork to set up these characters, the two twins, Smoke and Stack, played by Michael B. Jordan. Both are veterans of the First World War, getting out of the life of the Chicago mob and trying to form their own path down south in their hometowns. But they're living in the Jim Crow era, and they're not going to get the equal rights or equal treatment that they both desire. The one twin, Smoke, is estranged from his current wife and is also dealing with the loss of his infant daughter. But they recruit their cousin Sammy, who has a desire to become a musician, breaking away from his strict religious background that his father's putting him under. They go around the town to inform people of what they're about to do, and they run into an old acquaintance, played by Haley Steinfeld, or Mary, and because of her connection to them, she's accepted by them anyway regardless of her race. So they set up their juke joint and they have a really big party, while Sammy starts to develop an infatuation with this woman who claims to be married. But then the vampires start to show up, and then the movie gets really, really intense. As I said earlier, the first half was fairly good, I would say. Not really anything amazing or anything. Now, part of that was my own fault because I saw this at a late night showing last night, a 9:30 showing, and there was a huge stretch of commercials and previews that they put in front of it. So I was fighting tooth and nail to stay awake during this whole thing. And also the sound in the theater that I saw this in, it wasn't exactly the greatest. There was a lot of echoing, but the character of Remick shows up, who's an Irish immigrant, and it turns out he's a vampire and turns this married couple that are members of the KKK. They go over to the juke joint to recruit the people inside, but they're pushed away due to some hesitation and some uneasiness about them. But Mary then goes out to do her own investigation. Then they turn her, and she goes in with Stack, and then turns him into a vampire, and then everything just gets crazy. It's basically a hard left turn in the other direction. From the moment the character Remick enters the picture, the tension starts to get higher and higher, and the more people he turns, the higher the stakes get. Stakes. Apologize for the pun, because they end up creating wooden stakes to stab them in the heart, because that's how one of the ways a vampire can get killed, along with cloves of garlic. It's all the usual tropes that we see with vampires, and they managed to put it to some really effective use. On the surface, it might sound like a generic vampire plot, but the way Ryan Coogler tells the story through his direction and his writing, it somehow manages to capture the audience's attention, and for me, it gradually became more riveting as it went on. A lot of groundwork they had to do in the first half, but then by the time the juke joint stuff starts to happen with the vampires coming in, the movie gets dialed up to 11. And the title of the movie kind of gives it away if you're really thinking about it. The vampires represent the sin that people will fall to. You can either forge your own path and not fall into temptation, or you can take the easy way and stay stagnant in your own eternal sin. Yeah, you'll be immortal on earth, but your soul will never go on to the afterlife. You'll never be able to transcend time. You're stuck in your eternal body forever. You also never get to enjoy the sun, which, if you see how the end of the movie turns out, yeah, not a desirable fate. Playing into the thematic elements of the whole thing, the two twin brothers feel like they're predestined to go down a dark path anyway, based on what their past experiences entail. Stack is able to find some comfort in becoming a vampire eventually, while Smoke is able to let it go and then get payback on those who were going to kill him anyway. The landlord who gave him the land to use the juke joint for, turns out that he was going to stab them in the back. And that all comes into play in the third act as well after the vampire stuff happens. Now, I'm not going to be able to do the movie justice, like I said, because There's so many details that are thrown around here that I'm more than certain I'm going to be able to pick up on rewatches, and of course from various analyses through YouTubers online. You also got a really good stack of actors in here, from Haley Steinfeld, Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, and a couple other people I can't name offhand, but this character, the wife of Smoke, she was in the show Loki as one of the TVA agents, and the woman that Sammy shows interest in, she was the mayoral-elect in The Batman. Now with Michael B. Jordan, this could have easily come off as very gimmicky and hokey. One actor trying to play two different people at the same time who are both identical, but they each have their own individual personalities where you're able to tell who's who. Besides his portrayal of Adonis Creed, this might be the best work that he's ever done. Now, Haley Steinfeld's character on the page seems very surface level and very limited, but it does add a good amount of relevance to it. Delroy Lindo, who I recognize from the Cider House Rules back in 1999 with Tobey Maguire, who's seen a lot of stuff throughout his time, manages to add his own type of trauma to the situation and use it for the benefit of fighting the vampires. In fact, there's one scene in the movie where he tells a story to one character about something from his past, and rather than using the traditional flashback imagery, they use sound effects and certain voices to enhance the story and add more layers to it. And that's another big compliment I can give this one. The music and the sound design, top-notch. Ludwig Göransson, who's now I guess a frequent collaborator of Ryan Coogler, he adds a good amount of personality to the musical score, which makes it actually feel like its own character. Now, I don't usually talk about lighting in film or television, but in this case, when you're out in the boonies, for lack of a better word, there's really not much to see other than moonlight or stars. It actually makes you feel like you're in that situation, experiencing it with everybody else. So when the big action set piece happens, it's all the blood and gore that we would expect from vampire stuff. Like I said, it didn't really do me any favors, given my thoughts on the horror genre and vampires in particular. But this all feels like a giant sense of catharsis for Sammy, who uses this event to forge his own path, rather than falling into the trap of eternal life on Earth. Now, Colton from Screen Crush pointed this out, where he gets dunked into the water by Remick. That's him being baptized into a new life. Him having all the sins that he surrounded himself with washed away. Smoke has a similar experience, which leads into his conclusion when he goes after those gangsters. But seeing all the vampires getting disintegrated as the sun comes up along with Remick, turning into a ball of fire. I mean, it's kind of on the nose to call it baptism under fire, but it's hard not to ignore. But what really got me are the post-credit scenes. The mid-credit scene is more or less an epilogue, while the second one is more or less an added addition, where it's left to the audience's imagination. To cover that real quick, we see younger Sammy sitting in the church playing a song that he played throughout the movie. I like to see it as him being in the afterlife where he can experience true eternal peace on the other side. But the epilogue, where we see an older Sammy, played by Buddy Guy, a famous blues musician, gets a visit from Stack and Mary in a Chicago club where he's become a famous musician. They offer him a chance of immortality, but he declines, saying he's content with the decisions that he's made, even though he's still haunted by what he saw that night. After respecting Sammy's decision, Stack ironically says that that was the last time he felt truly free. Of course, there's a lot more to it than I could cover, from him seeing a vision of his wife and their daughter, Sammy's father challenging him to drop the guitar and going into what he feels is the right path for him, and then deciding against it, hearing all the vampires in the meadow nearby singing Rocky Road to Dublin, and some other stuff that I'll probably just be repeating. But Sinners is truly an experience that you have to see on the big screen. Ryan Coogler, of all the movies I've seen him done, minus Fruitvale Station, which I have yet to check out, he really outdoes himself here, and I think this is going to be talked about for many years to come. A lot of people are calling this an instant classic. I would not be surprised if that were the case. And for a movie that has the usual stuff that we've seen before, with vampires, horror, period pieces, and so on, this is a very unique blend of all that stuff, and I think it has the potential to have a lasting impact. It could also help the industry going forward, that's for sure. You still haven't seen it. If you don't care about spoilers, I apologize for ruining it for you. Please, do not miss out on this one. It needs to be experienced in the theater. If it's available near you, go check it out. Don't hesitate. So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Comment below and tell me what your thoughts are on this movie if you've seen it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.